Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct 2024. The Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct, or CODE, outlines the expected behavior of WCB staff and contractors. The Code focuses on respect for the law, appropriate business conduct, and compliance with WCB policies and procedures. As an employee, contractor, volunteer, or other associated individual, you are personally responsible for ensuring that your actions and behaviors remain consistent with this code. It is therefore vitally important for you to know, understand, and remain committed to its contents and underlying principles and values. The code states that all WCB staff and contractors will review the code at least once a year. For 2024, the focus of the review will be on appropriate social media use and conflict of interest. By the end of this module, you will become familiar with the following components of the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct: the WCB's expectations surrounding social media and other medium forums, conflict of interest guidelines and procedures, and the process for declaring and assessing real or potential conflicts of interest. Our values and expectations. The following module will provide further clarity regarding the values and expectations that will guide our individual conduct and decision-making as it relates to social media and other media forums. What is social media? Social media includes websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. Examples include Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Snapchat. The WCB recognizes the great value of social media and other media forums to promote Mission Zero and increase awareness about our injury prevention and compensation services. While social media and other media forums can be valuable tools, they can also bear significant risk. It is essential that all communications are consistent with the WCB Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct and the organization's mission, values, policies, and intended messaging. It's important to note that only individuals who have been trained and designated by the WCB have authorization to speak on the organization's behalf. Continue on to learn more about communicating through social media. Communicating through social media. The WCB Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct outlines the following as it pertains to posting content on social media. Ensure that you do not use WCB email addresses, corporate symbols, logos, trademarks, or signatures. Ensure that your communications cannot be perceived nor interpreted to be an expression of WCB views. Ensure that you make it clear that your own communications are solely your own, especially when your comments or profile could identify you as a WCB employee. Ensure that your communications are consistent with WCB policies. When communicating through social media or other media, inside or outside of work hours, presume that your communications will be read by others, including work and personal colleagues, customers, and stakeholders, and that there may always be a permanent record. The WCB monitors social media for references to our organization. You should assume that any comments made regarding the WCB through online tools could be read by the WCB. Should the WCB find that an employee's on or off-duty conduct could negatively impact their ability to perform their work, negatively impact another's ability to perform their work, interferes with the WCB's business interests, or violates WCB policy, including but not limited to policies regarding confidentiality and respectful workplace, such employees may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. Continue on to the next lesson to understand why what you post matters. Blurring the lines, personal and professional life. There is no denying the importance of social media in the modern age. It can bring people together to build connection and community, even when they're not face-to-face. While many people prefer to keep their work and personal lives separate, those lines can blur with social media. Reminder, Anything posted on social media has the potential to become public knowledge. Personal use can have professional ramifications. Even if your social media accounts are personal, remember that your posts and interactions can reflect on your professional image. Avoid posting content that could be considered offensive, discriminatory, or unprofessional. Expand the basic guidelines below to mitigate the risk of using social media. Understand company policies. Familiarize yourself with the WCB policies regarding social media during work hours. Respect confidentiality. Be cautious about sharing confidential information about the WCB, clients, or colleagues on social media. Avoid discussing sensitive work-related matters publicly. Set privacy settings. Adjust the privacy settings on your social media accounts to control who can see your posts and information. Consider keeping your accounts private or limiting access to remove coworkers and professional contacts. Be mindful of timing. Avoid spending time on social media during work hours, as it can be perceived as a lack of productivity. Save personal social media usage for breaks or outside of work hours. Think before you post. Before sharing content on social media, think about how it could be interpreted by others, including coworkers, customers, and supervisors. Consider the potential impact on your professional reputation before hitting post. Be respectful of others. Treat your coworkers and customers with respect on social media, just as you would in person. Avoid engaging in heated debates or arguments, and be mindful of how your interactions could affect your working relationships. Report concerns. If you encounter inappropriate or concerning behavior on social media related to work, report it to your HR business partner or supervisor. By following these guidelines, you can navigate personal social media use at work in a way that maintains professionalism and respects company policies. Consider this. During a quick break at work, your friend sends you a text message asking what you're up to. Instead of responding via text, you decide to send them a quick photo of yourself at an important meeting via social media app Snapchat. By accident, you post to your entire Snapchat network instead of sending directly to your friend. Behind you in the photo, there is confidential company information. You get a notification that someone has taken a screenshot of your photo. Uh-oh, why did someone screenshot the photo? What information could they zoom in on in the background? Who else received this photo? You never know who is going to screenshot, save, or distribute your posts on social media. Even if your intentions were good, images and information can be circulated across social media channels quicker than it takes to delete something. Check your surroundings. Make sure the photo does not include company information. Better yet, avoid taking selfies at work to eliminate the risk of inadvertently sharing company details. The permanence of social media. Consider this scenario where John learned an important lesson about the permanence of social media. John had recently posted a series of tweets criticizing his company's new policies, expressing frustration about his workload, and making sarcastic remarks about his coworkers. The HR department at John's company calls him in for a meeting and explains that while social media may seem transient, posts and comments can have long-lasting consequences. HR points out that even if John deletes his tweets, screenshots may have been taken by coworkers or customers, and the content can still be found online. John is asked to remove the offending tweets and is reminded of the company's social media policy, which outlines guidelines for appropriate online behavior. John is also encouraged to think carefully before posting anything on social media in the future, considering how it might impact both his own reputation and that of the company. This scenario serves as a reminder of the importance of understanding the permanence of social media and the potential consequences of what we post online, both personally and professionally. The two scenarios within this lesson illustrate how misuse of social media at work, whether through excessive personal use or sharing inappropriate content, can have negative consequences for both the individual and the workplace environment. It's crucial for employees to exercise discretion and professionalism when navigating social media, especially in a professional setting. Before posting on personal accounts, ask yourself, could I regret posting this? Is there anything in the background of my photo that is WCB property? Would I be upset if someone at the WCB saw this? Am I accidentally sharing under my company's email address? Could this content be seen as offensive? Does this post include proprietary information? Am I spreading negative gossip? If you checked off any of the boxes above, you should think twice and avoid posting that content on social media. As Aaron Burry states, don't say anything online that you wouldn't want plastered on a billboard with your face on it. Conclusion. Social media has changed the transitional corporate monologue into a two-way dialogue with customers and stakeholders. Social media offers a new and extremely powerful tool we can use to improve satisfaction with, accessibility to, and public confidence in our organization. Below are a few critical takeaways from this module. While you're at work, do not use your smartphone or other personal electronic devices to communicate with workers or employer customers. Avoid using social media and electronic communications tools for personal communications during paid working hours. Do not communicate with the news media unless authorized by the Director of Communications. Where your personal comments or profile can identify you as a WCB employee, do not use WCB email addresses for personal or social media use. Do not imply that your views are the WCB opinion. You must include a disclaimer clearly stating that your personal opinions do not reflect the opinions of our organization. Do not reference customers, coworkers, business partners, or suppliers by name or confidential details of their work. Do not use WCB corporate logos, trademarks, word marks, and signatures for professional networking or personal use. You must avoid harassment, bullying, threats, intimidation, ethnic slurs, personal insults, sexist comments, obscenity, racial or religious intolerance, or any other form of behavior prohibited in the workplace by our Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct and Respectful Workplace Policy. And do not communicate with the news media on WCB matters unless you have been authorized to do so by the Director of Communications. Remember, online communications can remain posted for an indefinite period. You may lose the ability to edit, change, or delete your communication, so consider your content carefully. Almost nothing is anonymous on the internet. Do not trust anonymity as a shield for disrespectful or harmful content. Introduction. What is a conflict of interest? The WCB defines conflict of interest to be any situation in which a person, either for himself or herself, or for other person, attempts to or appears to have attempted to promote a private or personal interest or benefit, which results or is perceived to result in an interference with the objective exercise of his or her duties within the WCB, a gain or an advantage for oneself or for someone else by virtue of his/her position at the WCB, and an employee's activities or interests are in conflict with the WCB's mission, values, and best interests. Conflicts of interest compromise or can appear to compromise the integrity and reputation of the WCB and its employees. All individuals employed or associated with the WCB must avoid creating, being involved in, or being perceived to be involved in conflicts of interest. By the end of this module, you will be able to describe the WCB guidelines and procedures as it relates to conflicts of interest, describe the process for declaring and assessing real or potential conflicts of interest, and explain where to find the conflict of interest declaration form. Guidelines and procedures. Doing the right thing means that you're acting with integrity in all that you do. But doing the right thing can become challenging when you're faced with ambiguous and complicated ethical dilemmas, like a potential conflict of interest. See below for potential conflict of interest situations, as well as procedures to follow if you find yourself in a situation that needs to be declared. Confidentiality of information. Information received in the course of employment at the WCB must be respected and must not be used to further the interests of another person or business or benefit them in any way. This could include, but is not limited to, any employee, relative, friend, business, or business associate. Employees should familiarize themselves with the confidentiality and conflict of interest provisions and talk to their out-of-scope manager for more clarification. Impartiality. Employees of the WCB are to act impartially when performing duties. We shall not give preferential or different, without benefit, treatment of any individual or organization. We need to ensure we do not provide or be perceived to be providing or removing a benefit based on a relationship. Where we are not able or could be perceived to be not able to be impartial in a situation, we must immediately disclose the situation to our out-of-scope manager. Business gifts and hospitality. Receiving or giving gifts, benefits, or unusual hospitality that might influence or give the appearance of influencing in any way the performance of one's duties shall be declined. Employees accepting any payment, gift, honorarium, or gratuity in addition to their salary paid by the WCB would be considered in conflict. When in doubt as to what is considered acceptable, the offer should be declined. Employees should check with their out-of-scope manager if they need clarification. Outside employment and volunteerism. Outside employment and volunteer work is to be avoided if it might create or be perceived to create a conflict of interest, or if it intrudes upon the employee's work time, or impedes employees' energies to fully attend to or concentrate on their duties with the WCB. Employees must declare any outside employment or potentially conflicting volunteer work to their out-of-scope manager, who will then follow processes outlined in this code for assessing potential conflicts of interest. Use of assets and information. Employees may not use the organization's assets or information at any time for personal gain. Personal or professional advocacy. Employees may not personally or professionally advocate for or represent a customer or claimant in any matter that is before the WCB and/or an external matter that could create a perception of partiality with respect to WCB matters and/or which could somehow harm the WCB, its reputation, and/or its customers. Potential conflict due to family relationships, by blood or by marriage. Work activities of family members or close relatives may also create conflicts of interest. WCB employment. Family members or relatives may currently be employed with or be considered for employment with the WCB. To avoid real or perceived conflicts of interest, family members should not generally be employed in a manner where one supervises, has influence over, or who could create impartial benefits for the other. Situations where there could be a real or perceived conflict of interest must be disclosed to one's out-of-scope manager and/or human resources for appropriate review. Vendors or service providers. If you learn that a family member or relative currently works or will be working for a vendor, consultant, or service provider, you should notify your out-of-scope manager who, in turn, will follow the prescribed assessment process to determine if any action is necessary. Where possible, this should be done before the conflict exists, prior to work being done or signing a contract. In general, family members or relatives can work for a vendor. However, you and/or your staff must not be in a position of influence or decision-making over any contractual or business arrangement. You must also be careful not to disclose any confidential information to a family member or relative. Customer relationships and employees who become injured workers. You must always maintain your integrity in developing professional working relationships with your customers. In the event you begin to care for a customer or their guardian in a more personal way, or you have developed a personal relationship with a customer, you will have placed yourself in a real or perceived conflict of interest. You must immediately notify your out-of-scope manager and ask to be removed from the file. To the greatest extent possible, where an employee submits or has an active WCB claim, Such claims should not be handled by anyone on their team and/or by anyone who might be perceived to be less than impartial or objective. Where possible, the file should be managed by employees in a different department or location. Declaring conflicts of interest. The best way to avoid a conflict of interest is to avoid doing anything that gives the appearance of a conflict. What happens if I find myself in a potential or real conflict of interest? Any personal interest that may impinge on or may reasonably be construed to be a conflict of interest and/or show partiality in any manner relevant to one's duties or responsibilities must be disclosed and declared in writing to one's out-of-scope manager by completing the WCB's online Conflict of Interest Declaration form. Take a look at the following video to learn how to complete and submit the Conflict of Interest Declaration form.
If you find yourself in a conflict of interest situation, you are required to complete and submit a conflict of interest declaration form. You can find the form on my WCB website under Employee Essentials and select Employee Forms and Guides. The list of forms is in alphabetical order, so the conflict of interest declaration form should be easy to find. Select the link, and a fillable PDF will open in a new tab on your browser. Once you have completed the form, save it to your computer. The next step is to log in to Oracle HCM, and under the Quick Actions menu, select Document Records. Select the Add button, and from the Document Type drop-down menu, search for Conflict of Interest Declaration Form. From here, you can drag and drop the form into the Attachments area, or select the link to add a file. Once the form has been successfully uploaded, select Submit. This concludes the demonstration on how to complete and submit a conflict of interest form.
Assessment of a potential conflict of interest. Where a potential personal interest or conflict of interest has been declared, the following assessment process will occur. The submission will first be reviewed by the employee's out-of-scope manager, and they will make recommendations to their respective director as applicable. The applicable director will review the declaration and the manager's recommendations and endorse and/or make adjustments where necessary before forwarding the issue to the Director of Human Resources. The Director of Human Resources will review the declaration and recommendations and discuss any concerns with the respective director and/or out-of-scope manager before a final decision is made. Where a declared situation could create a real or perceived significant conflict or risk for the WCB, the respective directors will also discuss the matters with their respective vice presidents. Once a decision has been made, the out-of-scope manager will discuss the decision with the employee and ensure appropriate follow-up where applicable. In all cases, employees must disclose any situation that arises which is or may become a conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest for themselves or for someone else. Failure to report a conflict or potential conflict may give rise to disciplinary action up to and including termination. Conclusion. Ask yourself the following questions for avoiding a conflict of interest. Do I have a personal or private interest that may conflict or be perceived to conflict with my duties? Could there be benefits for me now or in the future that could cast doubt on my objectivity? How will my involvement in the decision or action be viewed by others? Are there risks associated for me or my organization? Does my involvement in the decision appear fair and reasonable in all the circumstances? What are the consequences if I ignore a conflict of interest? What if my involvement was questioned publicly? Have I made any promises or commitments in relation to this matter? Do I stand to gain or lose from the proposed action or decision? Summary. Conflicts can be actual or perceived. Conflicts arise when an employee has competing interests or loyalties that either are or can be perceived as being at odds with each other. Conflicts of interest can damage your reputation and erode trust. Even the appearance of a conflict of interest can lead your coworkers and bosses to doubt your work and question your trustworthiness. You are obligated to act. Living the WCB values means we all must take action to maintain ethical standards. Appropriate actions include fully disclosing anything that could even be perceived as a conflict of interest, and always making a manager or HR aware of any actual or perceived conflicts. Summary. Key takeaways. Employees may encounter an ethical dilemma or situation while working at WCB where there is no easy answer or solution. However, before acting, test yourself and ask yourself the following questions. Are you clear about the organizational values and expectations, and are they reflected in your action or decision? Would a reasonable person in the community or at the WCB, having knowledge of all the facts, consider that you have acted fairly, honorably, and rationally? If your action or decision became known to everyone, would it either bring credit or discredit to you and the WCB? Solving your ethical dilemma related to WCB's Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct may be as straightforward and simple as answering these 3 questions. If not, resources are always available if you need further guidance or help. Be assured that you have the support of the organization and your manager in resolving an ethical dilemma. If you are faced with a dilemma or difficult circumstance and you are uncertain how to act or proceed, please discuss the situation with others, including your out-of-scope manager. Through continuous discussion and sharing experiences, we educate ourselves and become aware of the options and their implications to help guide us to a sound decision. Thank you for completing this course.